This is going to be a little bit of a gush fest because I am a pretty big fan. So hopefully I can get through.
By all means.
All right.
I could use the boost in confidence today.
All right. Well, I think I can deliver that.
Okay. Well, very cool.
I'd like to welcome to the program Brett Emmons of the Glorioius Sons out of Kingston, Ontario. Born and raised?
Yes, sir.
What's it like growing up in Kingston, Ontario? I've never been.
Well, I was in a town called Odessa, which is, about 15 minutes, 20 minutes outside, which actually had 600 people in it. So I guess it's not actually Kingston. But it was a small town. I used to, walk home from school, sometimes jog, sometimes take the bus. There's 600 people in my high school. A lot of families, I'd been there for the better part of 50 years, so you heard the stories of the old fights between the Bath boys and the Amherst boys and the Odessa boys, and it was kind of I guess it'd be similar to an all-American kind of upbringing, what you'd see on Friday Night Lights if you turn the TV on and watch that drama shit on TV. But I say that actually hypocritically because we actually just put it on tour, on the last tour, and I got addicted to it for about a week.
I know what that's like.
Yeah, but I moved into Kingston at 18, I think I was, and it was kind of like, I guess it'd be like for somebody else, moving to New York City or something, even though it's a much smaller town. There's 140,000 people in it.
That's pretty big.
Yeah, and I kind of just, got sucked into the culture of playing at the bars and drinking and meeting all the townies and hanging out and, just kind of getting to know everybody in the city, at least all the townies that like to drink and hang out. And, it's a great city. It's small. The downtown core is very, very small and everybody knows each other. And it's very friendly, and it's driven by, food culture and the arts, and there's a lot of musicians and a ton of bars, and it's right on the water. It's a real nice place.
All right. Well, maybe I'll come visit you some next summer. Not this summer.
You
I got
should.
plans.
You might stay there longer than you'd hoped.
Yeah,
but,
you never know, man. I've lived in Minnesota my whole life. I'm used to the cold, so.
Well, I'm still here, and I've been telling people I was moving out for about 3 years now.
Well, Young Beauties and Fools came out last October, and I got to tell you, it immediately became my album of the year, and it still really hasn't left my car very often. Let me ask you a question. I mean, I think you're really a phenomenal lyricist. The lyrics on this record they're almost younger than the Union. Like, the Union is almost told from like an older person's perspective. This album, I don't know, it almost sounds like I mean, how old are you, Brett? Let me ask you that real quick.
I'm 25.
Okay, so a lot of these lyrics seem almost autobiographical of your life, maybe in the last couple of years. Was that kind of the intent?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The songs were created from probably, I guess, 21 to 24, and we released it when I was 24. So, it's the better part of 3 years spent in downtown Kingston. Kind of, my brother said I was gallivanting around town. Waking up with hangovers, trying to make sense of, the person that I offended the night before. Or,
did you ever look in your wallet and wonder how much money you spent?
Oh God, I spent every single dime that I made off of the Union in the bars.
Way to go!
In the bars at downtown Kingston, it was a shit show. The last few years have been a shit show. I've started to finally, get a little bit of a routine in order. I guess a bit of one. But yeah, it's all, you know, loosely autobiographical. It's all from a personal spot, and some of the songs are, you know, pretty much word for word exactly about my life. But I can't say the whole thing's autobiographical. I like to say semi-autobiographical. And I think with the union thing, what you're talking about, how I kind of was speaking from an older place, I think that was kind of because I hadn't really found what I wanted to sing about at the time. I hadn't really found a voice at that time. I was like 18, 19, 20 when I was writing those songs, and you know, I'd only been seriously writing music for 5 or 6 years, and
only,
you know,
yeah.
well, yeah, I guess you can say that, but I think that I really I was pushed by the producers to write about myself on this album, and you know, it kind of unlocked something in me, and a lot of that stuff was, you know, about things that seem very, you know, meaningless. I guess a lot of the stuff on the Young Beauties and Fools album, they're not big topics. They're not about, like, you know,
sure,
political things or any like hugely existential things, but they're about a young kid going through changes, trying to figure out what's going on in his life and who he's going to be and who he's been. And I think I kind of figured out, you know, what I could write about, and that was myself and my family and my friends and my city, and you know,
like, it's very authentic. I mean, you deliver the songs vocally. I mean, you're a phenomenal singer. I told you this was going to be a bit of a blowfest, but you know, let me touch on something. I caught you in Minneapolis just a couple months back at 7th Street Entry.
Yeah.
You played a song called Ruby that I'm not familiar with. I've since learned that it was on your debut EP, but you mentioned, you talked about writing the song just before you played it, and you mentioned that at the time you weren't a singer yet. Explain that to me a little bit, because you come off almost, I don't know, so naturally gifted as a singer. Like, it almost seems like this would have been something you would have been doing long before you got good at writing songs or playing music, you know? How is it that you weren't already singing, you know, at I don't know, what would you have been, 16, 17 years old at that point?
Well, I would have been 18 at that point, I think. And I had been singing, but I had just gotten back from Halifax and joined the band kind of on a whim. They kind of let me into the band as a favor, because
they owe you one, man.
Because I'd come on some, you know, hard times, and they already had their thing going, and there was 2 other singers. My brother was one of them, and Andrew Young, who left the band 3 years ago now, was a singer as well. So I kind of, you know, was, I guess, elbowing my way in, writing songs. You know, they knew I was gonna sing, but I wasn't the main focus at that point, and you know, that was okay to me. But at the same time, I ended up just kind of writing more songs and bringing more songs to the table than everybody else. And by the time we went to release our first album and record it with John Angus, he kind of just heard my voice and said, you know, that's the one that we want to put forward. And it was kind of, you know, a little bit of a thing within the band. Obviously, it was hard for everybody to kind of accept that. But, you know, it ended up working out in the long run, clearly. But yeah, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with singing. I actually, some nights I fucking hate singing. You know, if I could sing the way that I sing in my apartment, in my basement, when I'm writing music to myself, and it could be that relaxed and without any kind of, you know, pressure to hit notes or, you know, not be off, I would love it at all times. But I'm the type of guy who, you know, I get in my head about it a lot, and I also put a lot of pressure on myself. I'm a very competitive soul, and, you know, I want to be the best singer in the world. I want to be the best songwriter in the world. I want to be, you know, the biggest band in the world. You know, it's just, it's, so I think what happens in that instance is I kind of, you know, sometimes my confidence gets shot, but I think my diluted mind makes up for it.
There's a handful of Canadian bands that are among our favorites. Like, it would be, along with you would be like Danko Jones and Monster Truck, or a couple of. I think both of them have talked about the struggles of touring the United States. You just kind of came through a nice little 2 or 3 week trek. I don't know. Forgive me if I'm stating that wrong, but was it? How did you do on that? I mean, was it okay? Was it a struggle? I mean, how many people did you bring with?
Well, we had tour manager, merch guy, guitar tech, and a front of house sound guy.
So 10 people.
And then we had the full band, 6 guys. So there was a lot of people on the road.
Where did you sleep?
We actually sleep in an RV that we rent, which comes out as being far cheaper than doing the whole van thing and getting hotels.
What about showers? Did you do the Planet Fitness thing? I've heard about that a couple of times.
Well, sometimes that's kind of like a personal choice. If you want to pay the money to go have a shower, then you do that. But I'm infamous for. It sounds bad, but I'm infamous for going, months without showering if I have to. I don't give a shit. It's just kind of, I don't know what it is. I was actually a pretty dirty kid. So, I think that's kind of a piece of me that never really changed. I don't, with that tour, it was, the numbers were up like crazy at the shows. We had a single, Everything Is All Right, that was doing pretty good in the States, at least better than any other single that we had out ever before. And the numbers were up at the shows. Morale is very high in the camp right now, and we're having a lot of fun.
That's good.
The problem with the States is that it's just such a huge country, and you could be a rock star in Canada, and that doesn't mean that you've come even close to the, I don't know how many bands there would be down there, but there's hundreds and hundreds of cities that are, bigger than our 5th biggest city in Canada. So it's different, all of our money, not all of it, but a lot of our money, our time, it gets funneled down from Canada into the States, and we work really hard down there. But I think since we've released the album, our morale has been real high, and we know what we're fighting for, and we're having a lot of fun. And you got to make the best out of the nights, no matter what. It's not like I'd rather be framing houses in the middle of the winter outside. I've got an opportunity to speak to people all over North America, and now the world's kind of opening up a little bit.
Good.
And I plan on winning over whoever's in front of me. So it is tough, but at the same time, I think that 95% of people are doing a lot tougher jobs than we are, and we're pretty blessed to be able to just make art and go and show it to people. That's our job. Our job is show and tell.
How come you're not playing heavy?
Well, the reason I don't play that song is because I wrote it when I was 19, 20 years old, and I wrote it about a couple friends who, were being disloyal, and I think that I kind of did myself an injustice with the way that I portrayed the song. And I'm not a very violent guy. I've never really believed in violence, and it comes off as a very violent song. And it started to show itself as that way when certain people were coming forth and offering us spots on military sites. One site actually offered to put the song over top of a 10-minute video or something like that of them. There was actual footage of people getting shot and bombs hitting the ground and stuff. And as soon as that shit starts happening, I don't want any piece of it. The song was supposed to be metaphorical.
Right.
And,
yeah, it's a character. It's not literal.
And it came off as very violent. And I just got tired of spreading that kind of message to people. And I changed. I was a very different person when I was 20 years old than I am now at 25. And, obviously there'll come a time when we play it again, and you have to come to terms with it, because fans do enjoy it. And I don't mean to rob people of their experience every night, but I got to find a way to kind of compartmentalize that in my brain and figure out why I'm singing it before I actually start singing again. I got tired of the things that it was representing, and the people that I guess people were using the song in a sense that I never believed in.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, and I respect the decision there. I will tell you, that would be if I had to complain, and it would really be hard to make me complain about the show I saw. That would be it. I said I wanted to hear Heavy, but it is a great song. My Lord, I think it's one of the best written songs I've ever heard.
Thank you.
But I understand what you're saying. I wouldn't want to necessarily be attached to that. It's not fair that people are taking it out of context and robbing it from people like me hearing an amazing band play it. But again, gush.
And you know what is, when you write a song, you expect people and you hope people to take their own meaning from it. That's your job as a songwriter, and that's part of the business.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily expect a meathead to turn a metaphorical song into a literal interpretation of a military aggression, I don't think that. I think that's kind of taking it too far.
Well, yeah, and we had people, actually, we had somebody tweet us. I don't remember the band name, and they tweeted us that it was a highly offensive song, filled with nationalistic viewpoints, and people need to understand that it's just a fucking metaphor,
I might actually insert a rant in the middle of our interview where I explain how that idiot's wrong.
And I don't, for one, if I have an opinion about that, you're gonna know. If I really thought that way, I have the mindset where I would be like Ted Nugent. Everybody would know that I'm the dickhole in the room, talking about it.
I'm with you. That's how I feel about stuff too. Yeah.
I would let people know, as soon as we released that song, I would let people know what, if it was about that. But that it just wasn't the case, and I just don't want to support any kind of violence or aggression. We get people fighting at our shows sometimes, and nothing pisses me off more than seeing people, beating the shit out of each other and bloodying up, and girls getting knocked over, and I don't know. Anyway, but moving on.
I get your point. I get your point. I do think it's a great song. Hopefully, down the road, you'll come to terms and bring it back. But I understand what you're getting at there. One thing is I wanted to mention is that we've actually spoken before. I interviewed you at Northern Invasion in 2015. It was you, your brother, and I'm sorry, Chris.
Chris,
yeah.
Chris, yeah. Wow, yeah.
We interviewed right outside. I don't know if you remember the layout there, but basically I wasn't able to salvage anything of it. And you talked about something that I wanted to go back to. Hopefully you can be as eloquent as you were then. But at the time, Gene Simmons of Kiss had talked about rock being dead. And you had made some comments basically saying, you know what, rather than just dump on rock and roll, why don't you do something and maybe you're in a position of influence. Maybe you could help out some younger bands. Do you remember anything about having that kind of comment or feelings about that you could elaborate on?
Well, yeah, I remember when around that time there was an article and he was talking about rock and roll being dead. And, I think looking back on it, I'm pretty sure that he was speaking about, the industry and how it's not set up for, rock gods,
right?
Or for I guess I don't know how you'd say it, but rock and roll bands to do well anymore. And part of what he's saying, I could agree with. I don't really remember the exact quote, so I apologize if I'm getting it wrong. But I don't necessarily disagree with everything that he's saying. But you know, you got a guy there who is a part of one of the most famous rock bands of all time, and I just think that it was irresponsible. And I don't myself. I myself am a bit jaded sometimes with the way that the music industry's going, and the way people are listening to music, and
sure.
who our heroes are. Our heroes are people who drive fucking Ferraris and wear $10,000 coats, and nobody at all cares about I guess my problem with it is that the people with influence and power aren't trying to tell people that they don't need that fucking $90,000 Ford F-150 to park in their driveway so they can impress their neighbor.
It's almost like they're watching their family drowned, and they're saying, "Yeah, that's the way it is. Look at my new watch," or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I just think that music is more materialistic and more materialistic than ever. Popular music, at least. And you know what? That's not a knock on anybody. I just think people's values nowadays aren't really lined up to deal with the fact that that's one of the biggest things poisoning North American culture in general. But as far as the rock and roll, I'm getting off topic now. But as far as the rock and roll thing goes, I think that what rock and roll needs is a band who's willing to step into the 21st century, willing to push rock and roll forward, willing to wear their hearts on their sleeve, willing to be confident, even cocky about it, and just go and friggin' turn heads one at a time. It's got to be done. It's got to be done the way that it was done, when Aerosmith was touring the country all the time. It's got to be done in the clubs, and it'll happen. Something will stick, and people need to talk about what's going on nowadays. We're living in 2018. We're not living in 1978 anymore. We don't need any more bands that sound like the 1960s. That's not what rock and roll needs. Rock and roll needs a prevalent band speaking about the real issues, the real people, the real things that are going on in life right now. I don't know what it was like to have a brother that died in Vietnam.
Right.
I don't know anything about that era. I wasn't born. It was years and years before I was born. But I know what it's like to have a friend hooked on fucking heroin. I know what it's like for people all around you to be dropping like flies from fentanyl. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be growing up in 2018 and for social issues and times to be changing and wondering where your place in that is as a 25-year-old male. I know what that stuff is like, and somebody in the fucking genre of rock and roll needs to start talking about that. It's gotta stop being cover acts. It's gotta be real rock and roll about the real things that are going on in real time. And I'm trying to. It doesn't have to be always political, but it's got to be relevant. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying myself. I'm trying to build my voice up enough so that I can talk about these things and learn. And if we never get famous from that, I don't give a shit, because I know that when I send my friend, a song about him and his life, that it actually helps him, and that there's people who don't have a voice or an outlet to go to and find comfort in nowadays. Not, and I'm nothing against old people, because I'm not trying to knock anybody.
Hey, I'm almost twice your age, and I'll tell you this: this is your time. I had my time. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I'm going to tell you flat out, you were one of the 5 bands that re-energized me in new music. I was done. I was like, it's all this homogenized crap that they just keep churning out. And all of a sudden I hear this band out of Kingston, Ontario, or there's another band called Boboflex that I'm into, or even Danko Jones. There's something raw about him that I love. But the authenticity is what hit me. And
there's great bands everywhere, man. And there's bands working their ass off.
And writing real music, that's what I'm talking about. Something that your songs have put the hair on my arms up. You know what I mean? And just it reminded me what it was like to be, 15 or 16, to be young, to be godless, graceless, and young. You know what I mean? Perfect.
Exactly. And there's, like I said, there's real kids, going through this stuff in real time. Mm-hmm. with nowhere to turn or relate with, no one to relate with, and I just want to hear some people talk about the real things, and I don't give a fuck about the car people drive or the fucking $30,000 chain around their neck, or like all that shit. That's all obsolete. That doesn't mean anything, and I get why people do it. I understand that a lot of people who have never, who grew up in life, and a lot of great artists, grow up in hard times, and and that's why people turn to materialistic things, because they've been taught that's the answer, that's what happiness is, and that's what they're teaching. That's what the American dream is. Buy this, buy that, step up, get that raise, so you can lease a car that costs $500 more a month. It's and I don't know. I just think that there's bigger things than all that. All that shit means nothing.
Somewhere in there is the manifesto for our show, but I've kept you a little longer than they wanted me to, but I think it's a great segue. If I could just kind of touch on some of my favorite lyrics of yours, largely from the new album, and you could kind of give me some thoughts on where you're at coming from on these. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. On My Poor Heart, there was one of the right as the song kicks in, you say, "I lost my wallet and my keys."
Yeah, I lost my wallet.
With my dignity. That one that reminded me a lot of being about your age. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? I'm guessing that you got drunk and woke up the next day and you don't have a wallet and your keys, or you have to figure out how to handle that.
Well, yeah, and I'm absolutely infamous for not being able to keep anything around. I don't things don't stick with me long, and the things that do always seem to come back to me magically. I don't know how, but I do not I do not keep things well, and that I've lost my wallet probably over 15 times in my life. It just that's the way that I am. I'm a pretty big airhead sometimes. But you're right. That's pretty self-explanatory.
Everything is all right. There's a line that I'm the closest thing my mother had to a daughter.
I'm the closest thing my mother had to a daughter. I used to be ashamed of that, but now I'm kind of flattered.
I'd like to think that I know what you're talking about there, but why don't you explain?
Well, I think that as males we grow up with a lot of pressure to be strong, and to be macho, and to be competitive, and to be a man's man. We're taught that there's this image of who you're supposed to be, just like for females, in the magazines, basically from 5 years old, they're showing who they should be, what they should buy, what they should wear, how to do their makeup. You know, same thing goes with males in a sense, where we're taught, you know, what it is to be a real man. And I kind of have struggled with that my whole life.
Okay.
I'm the youngest of 3. I've got 2 brothers who, you know, are relatively, I guess the best way to describe it would be they're kind of like, there's a Sopranos line, the strong, silent, I think it's Gary Cooper type. They're kind of the epitome, at least, of, you know, what it is to be a male. You know, they work hard, they're strong, they don't cry. And I was that third kid, you know, attached to his mother's hip. You know, I was a psycho. I was a little tyrant. I was a baby. I cried all the time. My mother, my mother thought that I was going to be a female and was going to call me Samantha. And I think she kind of, like, I don't know, maybe raised me a little bit that way, to be sensitive and, you know, to be that way. And I had trouble, you know, kind of navigating that my whole life, you know, because, you know, to some people I was this, you know, big, strong, competitive, you know, fiery person who, you know, I would try to kind of show that, to be myself. And deep down, I'm, you know, the most sensitive, you know, loving, kind of mess that you'd ever meet. And I don't mean to call all females or daughters a mess, but, you know, I was not very masculine at all. And I have come to terms with that, you know, as I've gotten older, and it's allowed me to kind of, you know, figure out some stuff about myself and understand myself a little bit more than I would have if I had continued, you know, thinking that I was a big macho idiot.
Well, I that's exactly the way I took it.
Good.
Godless, graceless, and young. I got to tell you that when I got to this track on the record, when I got it first, that line comes up where it's so damn good to be godless, graceless, and young. I mean, I had to stop. I mean, it was just immediately I'm like jealous. I wish I wrote this song. I'm not, no joke, I probably listened to it 10 times in a row. Unfortunately, it's not that long, so it didn't take too long, much of my time, but my God, I love that lyric. I thought graceless was a particularly clever way. Is that because drunk doesn't start with G? You know, are you talking when you say you're godless, graceless, and young? Does graceless refer to being inebriated or just?
Oh yeah, well the whole thing, yeah, like that. I think the whole album's kind of referring to being inebriated. Yeah, I had that line kicking around for years. I was just waiting for the right little nook to fit it into.
Everything about that song, the way it starts, the verses, oh my God, the cocky opening, like, ain't the prettiest thing you've seen before, like, whatever.
Take a walk down Main Street. Tell me it ain't the most charming thing that you've ever seen, with that cold breeze blowing off the lake in June.
Just brilliant, honestly.
Oh, thank you.
It was immediately my favorite song, but of course, as I listened to the record, I switched gears on all that stuff. But I guess I didn't have any questions about that. I know exactly what that song is about, but that was one of those ones that time warped me. It's like, oh my God, I'm hanging out with my high school friends again, and we're drinking shitty beer, and we're doing something in water. I don't know, but
good.
I'll tell you this, then I'll kind of skip ahead here towards, I got a bunch of notes, but we're running out of time here. You said in My Blood, you sing in there that your daddy's on the run from the IRS, but in Godless, Graceless, and Young, you also sang they sent the tax man, I lost my job, and I got hooked on Oxycodone. So is there really some kind of tax issue in your family that you were dealing with, or is that more of the semi-autobiographical part?
Well, the problem... My Blood was the most autobiographical song on the album, but I had to change it. I had to change the verse because I sat with it for a long time, and it was about somebody close to me, and I knew that when I released it, I can't tell you what the verse was. I wish I could, but I knew when I released it that it was going to break their heart.
Okay.
To hear it, and the IRS part in the song actually is just it just fit well with what I had before. So that is not an autobiographical piece that is attached to the album. So no, I'm sorry to break your heart on that, but no,
it's just a question, man. It's all good.
I've got personal tax issues right now, but no, nobody in my family has tax issues.
Okay, well, I'll wrap it up here a little bit. The Glorioius Sons, in my opinion, are part of the future of rock. Let me just ask you this: does rock need a savior?
Well, I think that some modesty would go a long way for rock and roll. I don't think that it needs, some kind of Led Zeppelin rock god. I think rock and roll needs somebody to speak to people on a personal level about relevant issues and, real things. I think that it needs to become relatable again. I think people need to tell the truth. And, I don't want to call it a savior because, I don't think that the person that's going to change rock and roll is going to be somebody with delusions of grandeur.
Okay.
I think that rock and roll just needs somebody to speak the truth, and to wear his heart on his sleeve, and speak about modern relevant things, and try to step into the 21st century. So I don't want to call it a savior because I think that that would be the wrong term, but it definitely does need a change, and it needs a makeover. I think that you'll see it come. You'll see it happen. And I think that it'll be a bit unintentional, and I also think that it will take you by surprise because nothing great ever comes and is, I guess, predictable. When Nirvana came on the scene, and I don't even listen to that much Nirvana, but you have to be honest with yourself, and those guys were speaking the truth, and they were completely original. And I think that we're building up a big task, big shoes for somebody to fill, but it needs to be like that.
I'm asking you guys to do it. So,
well, you know what, we're trying every day, and I think there's 1,000 other bands that are trying every day. And I think that all you can ask of people is just to put themselves on paper and to keep playing. But believe me, I'm definitely going to try. I didn't start doing this to speak to as little people as possible. I want to speak from a podium in the sky.
Right on.
And yeah. So thank you very much,
Brett. I could not have enjoyed this more. I am an even bigger fan now. You are wise beyond your years, and I mean that sincerely. You're starting to tour with the Struts here pretty quick, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
I will be seeing you again in Minneapolis. Will you be kind of mingling around like you did at 7th Street? Because my wife would like a picture with you.
Yeah, I think we'll be out at the merch table. We don't miss too many merch tables in the States.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll be out there. Thank you so much, eh? This is very fun. Thanks a lot.